normally there are a couple of things that can make a class fun, right? I kind of try to think about it in two main ways, and that's fantasy and mechanics, right? Because fantasy is like, you know, the aesthetics, the what it means, and so on and so forth, while the mechanics can be the playstyle, the performance, the damage, that is it fun to play, to press a button, to do the rotation, and all of that good stuff. This is what goes into the fantasy of the warrior, right? That I particularly enjoy it. And moving past that, of course, we get into the mechanics, which Doug pointed out, and everybody else pointed out as well, Steelski as well. The mechanics are really cool. The way that the game, WoW, and the devs have made warrior, at least in Shadowlands, because it kind of was fine before too, but I feel like they've actually polished a lot about it right now, especially with Fury and arms. They're fluid, they're meaty, the animations are you know, what's the word, man? Vicious. I guess vicious is what I'm looking for. It feels satisfying to press Mortal Strike. It feels satisfying to press Execute. It feels satisfying to press Charge and smack at the enemy and hear that thing. Or when you slam shield, if you play prot, right, then you slam it with the shield and all of that good stuff. So in terms of, you know, how it feels mechanicals, you can think about sound effects and visual effects and all of that. Warrior fucking does it, man. Warrior does it in WoW, and if that's something that you're interested in, you're gonna love it as well. Now, in terms of the rotation, I can talk about prot a little bit more, since that's what I'm maining right now. It is, and this, coming back to what I mentioned before, the sounds are so good, yeah, boy. Coming back to what I mentioned before, and for the protection, and why I recommend Protection Warriors, because it combines all the classic good tank mentalities, right? You see incoming damage coming your way, you put up your shield and you mitigate that damage, right? In the sense of shield block. You have shield wall as, you know, the quintessential defensive cooldown that kind of creates this stigma, this whole I guess definition, because pretty much if you talk in a general sense for people, especially this is probably more common in PvP, if you talk about big defensives that reduce incoming damage, pretty much everybody refers to them as walls, right? So you have shield wall, plus it's, you know, an iconic move, especially stemming from old age combat where that was actually an actual move. I don't know who used it first. I know the Vikings popularized it a lot, but I feel like it's an older combat tactic used on the battlefield. But I feel like it was, were the Romans who used it, or the Macedonians? You know, where they put that big wall of shields and they stick their spears out of it. I forgot what nation used to use that, but that was like not as much as a shield wall as kind of like a hedgehog type thing. Fuck, I even knew the name and I forgot. Spartans, Romans. Was it Spartans? Much older, yeah. But that's the cool concept of it, right? And with Prot Warrior, if you do decide Phalanx, wasn't the Phalanx the name of the troop though? The Phalanx formation. Ooh, all right. There you go, right? But that's the cool part of Protection Warrior, is because you, and this is why I gravitated towards it as well. When you press shield block, which is your normal mitigation, physical attacks become a joke, and that feels awesome as a tank, right? To know that somebody's trying to smack you really hard and then you just pick up your shield and you say no, right? That's the fucked up mindset that I enjoy, right? It's like, fuck you, no, you're not doing shit, you're not smacking me down. Plus it's, you know, it's always the trope of the warrior fighting the dragon, right? And pretty much all the tropes, you have the shield to put up, and when it breathes down fire on you, and then the sword to cleave its head or whatever the fuck, right? What up, Lib B? And especially in 925, and I hope this continues in Dragonflight as well, they actually made protection really, really good, as opposed to a lot of popular belief. I think most people don't see protection as good because of its damage profile, which kind of sucks. It sucks, but it is what it is. It does probably right now the most, if not among the most amount of single target damage with the execute buffs, which is really nice. And in the AoE department, it might lack a little bit. But with that, with the way that the spec works, with how it feels to press cooldowns, with the fact that you have tools for almost everything, Prot Warrior feels like a complete tank in my book. Or the missing part is basically the tuning but that's not that bad and definitely won't affect the majority of the people if you do decide to main a Prot Warrior, which is what I did. Plus, if you play in the Prot Warrior 925 right now with a tier set, it has one of the coolest playstyles ever with, you know, the tier set and the Necrolord Covenant and the legendary, the Necro legendary, what is it, Glory again. Maintaining that banner uptime is really cool because it feeds into the Prot playstyle, and it kind of makes Prot be what it kind of used to be back in Legion, where you have like a big influx of rage and you just spend that rage constantly to reduce cooldown, to generate more rage, and that kind of fluid stuff is what you see in this Warlock, for example, and in actually any Warlock spec that uses the Wilfred legendary. Good morning, Denson. It's so squishy against magic damage though. It depends. That's an incomplete point of view in my opinion, because not all tanks are good against magic damage, and for the longest time tanks were always weak against magic damage, and up until a BFA, or at least halfway through Legion, all tanks had magic damage mitigation. Bears had Mark of Ursal, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember exactly what it did. I think it reduced magic damage that you were taking. We can look this up on Wowhead actually. If it's still here, let's see, because this is interesting. So in terms of magic damage, was it Mark of Ursal? If they still have it in their database. Mark of Ursal? Was it not Mark of Ursal? Something Ursal. Bears used to have it. Anyway, all tanks pretty much had something like this. Warrior had shield barrier. I know this is 100%, right? If we still have it here, the database. Shield barrier. The caster brings their shield to the fore, defending themselves from all damage. It wasn't absorbed back then, wasn't it? I thought it was just magic damage, but it was basically absorbed. It was before Ignore Pain, I feel, when it was added. So you had that, and all tanks had something like that. And I know there was a patch where they essentially removed all of this because they were becoming too good. Ursoc. Was it Ursoc? You sure? Because I'm actually curious right now. Mark of Ursoc. No. If I just type Ursoc, it's gonna find all sorts of things. I think I know it was Ursal, because Ursoc was just dealing with the legendary back in Legion. I think almost every Covenant of tank choice for MDI at the end of BFA has a fun ability. Yeah, I actually think if you're gonna be playing Prot Warrior, pretty much all Covenants are fun in a certain way. Not all are equally strong though. Wasn't Prot Warrior the tank of choice for MDI at the end of BFA? It was midway through BFA. I don't know if it was still at the end. I don't remember if it was at the end, but in the mids, in 8-1, Prot Warrior was overpowered. It was dealing like stupid damage. It was definitely being used there. I don't remember in 8.3 if it's still used. I don't think so. Was it Bear or Monk? I think it might have been Monk. It's not that weak though. I feel squishy with Paladin Warrior. Paladin might be squishier. So the thing, okay, so just to dispel this, hopefully once and for all with magic damage for Prot Warrior, basically from my experience, I might be missing a couple of numbers here and there, but when it comes to big magical hits, occasional magical hits, probably no tank is better than Prot Warrior, maybe DK because you have AMS. But if you can reflect it, you essentially negate it 100%. There are plenty of mechanics in the game that Prot Warrior can negate in terms of magic damage, and obviously all of them with all Warrior specs with Spell Reflect. For instance, you can negate the dot that you get from the third boss in Sanguine Deaths after she does the big explosion. Not only do you take less damage from the explosion, 20% less damage because of shield Spell Reflect, but also you don't get the dot applied, which also can be immune by DK. However, DK cannot immune each one of them because AMS is on a too big of a cooldown, right? So it matters. So when you say that a tank, especially Prot Warrior, when you say that it's weak to magic damage, we have to discuss about what type of magic damage, because there's, let's say, the third boss in Sanguine Deaths type magic damage that comes about every, what, 30 seconds, something like that, 40 seconds. And you have shield Spell Reflect for all of them. You have a barbed, whatever Hakar does, right? That barbed claw or whatever. Barbed Talon or whatever, that you can probably Spell Reflect all of them, or if not, you'll miss one or two. That does a lot of tank damage. Same thing with Reaping Scythe from Theater of Pain on the last boss. Same thing with Soul Crusher, was it? From Uezala and the other side. Again, those things, that's something that only Prot Warrior can do, right? You have like massive hits that you cannot spell reflect, that you can just pop shield wall, and that gives you 50% reduction. I don't think any tanks has 50% reduction on anything. I don't know if Kings from Prot Paladin gives you 50% or just gives you 40%. And you can stack it. You can stack that with 20% from Spell Reflect. You can stack it with 10% more from Demo Shout. And right now, if you even have Avatar, you have 10% more damage reduction. What does that do? It's like 50, 70, 80, like, or can probably get to like 90% damage reduction, right? On an individual ability. So it is really, really fucking strong, right? Now, where Prot Warrior suffers is constant magic hits. Like, let's think about Halls of Atonement. If you pick up a lot of casters, right? If you have like 3 or 4 casters, or the other side, when you get the caster packs in front of each individual zone, if the kicks are not hit, yeah, you can reflect one, you can mitigate another, but if they keep coming up, then you're starting to get fucked because you have no way of coming back from that. Neither does Brewmaster, neither does Prot Paladin, although you can heal a lot more than the other two. Neither does Bear really as well, but you can also Frenzy regen. DK can pretty much heal most of it. Vengeance has a lot of magic damage reduction. This shit deserves Rubber man like 80s DJ Mix, goddamn it, man. You can stay on melee on Muezala's combo. Yeah, you can also do that if you want. Instead of actually using Spell Reflect on the Soul Crusher, you can use the Spell Reflect on whatever big slam he does in front of you, which you can reflect that entirely. You get 0 damage, not to mention you don't get the dot, right? You'll take the Soul Crusher to your face, but you don't ever have to move, and you can do that, you can do that with all the warrior specs, right? And if you add Fleshcraft as well, Prot Warrior is very tanky. True, but it feels so squishy when tanking halls and I get to hit by wicked bolts and almost die. Yeah, but that's not the problem. See, this is the misconception. Stalkaiser and everybody that's trying to play Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior is not an easy tank to play, okay? If you fuck up, then you get slapped. And a lot of people see that and they think Prot Warrior is weak, but it's mostly because it's very hard to pull off. Not to mention, being hit by wicked bolts is 50%, let's say 50% your fault as a Prot Warrior and 50% the fault of your party. Your party has to kick, right? That's why the bolts hit so hard, is because the design of the encounter was made so that those bolts are kicked, right? They're not supposed to go through, but let's say they go through. You can Spell Reflect one and you can mitigate the other. If you know that they're coming through and you use Spell Reflect and you see your party's kicks all being used and you know it's gonna come again, at least 1 or 2 more bolts, then you pop Shield Wall, right? Then Demo Shout, normally you kind of want to rotate it on cooldown, but let's say Shield Wall, you're trying to keep it, right? You Shield Wall. Worst case scenario, you Last Stand, although as a pro you don't really want to use Last Stand for that, but if you know that your party is not kicking properly, you can Last Stand. And lastly, you can kick those casts. You can stun them with Shockwave, you can fear them with Intimidating Shout. So there are plenty of tools in your warrior kit. It's just harder to do it because a lot of tanks get away with not having to do that. A DK can get away with that by just pressing AMS and you can just absorb 2 bolts, get a full bar of runic power, and then if another one comes through, you can death strike it, right? Plus your kick is ranged, so you don't have to be in melee to kick it. You can also pull the target to you. You can also stun it, right? Which is maybe a little bit easier to do than what Prot Warrior does, right? I don't think tanks are meant to be immortal though. No. If your group ain't doing their job, it's a GG. They specifically made tanks squishier in Shadowlands as well, right? Which kind of strengthens and underlines their weaknesses a little bit more, especially if people fuck up. Because you have a tank like Prot Warrior that has all proactive mitigation, right? You mitigate before stuff happens. You have a lot of percent damage reduction, which is some of the best types of mitigation that a tank can have. You reduce the damage that you take as opposed to healing it afterwards with a Death Strike, with what Soul Cleave that Vengeance has, with Word of Glory that Paladins has, with Frenzy Regen, and with Expel Harm. Every tank has a heal except Prot Warrior. You can spec into Impending Victory, but you really don't have to do that. Tanks don't have to spec. Other tanks don't have to spec into healing to be able to withstand that kind of damage. Which is again why Warrior is probably seen as a weaker tank because you have more responsibility than maybe with other tanks, right? So if you accept that, you can pick up Prot Warrior and you can do good, but you do have to practice, and you have to keep in mind that if you can master your toolkit, you will be tanky. Like, I'm not the best Prot Warrior in the world, but Duck here has healed me and Zuff here has healed me. I don't know what they think, but so far from what I was able to gather, they didn't really have a problem healing me, as opposed to maybe other tanks. You guys don't have a kicks. Exactly, right? You need kicks. Yeah, Shockwave, that's what I said. AoE stun. The button to kick. Yeah, super good. Solo Mocast. Yep, it's gonna be. I mean, he is here in soul and spirit, right, Marcelian? Good talk. This is so this is one of the main reasons why I love Prot Warriors, because you have a lot of tools at your disposal, but they're not that easy to use, right? They take a little while practice. They take a little bit of practice. But if you do decide to main Prot Warrior, fucking recommend it. It's gonna be the hardest tank you're gonna play, but if you can play Prot Warrior, you can play any tank. Plus, you're gonna be learning the basics of playing a Prot Warrior, the basics of properly using mitigation, of understanding the encounter, of using your best tools as possible, because you always have at least 2 things you could do when damage starts to hit you, right? And if you choose the most optimal one, the other one is gonna be left over in case something happens, in case shit happens, in case people miss kicks. Yeah, I can vouch for that. If the Prot Warrior plays good, it's one of the nicest tanks to heal. Plus, if you've done any kind of self-analysis or looked at any logs, whether or not you play Prot Warrior, the most amount of damage you'll ever get as a tank is from melee attacks. Pure melee attacks. Melee attacks accounts normally for about 80 to 90% of the damage that you take. Usually more than 90. This patch is a little bit weird because at least the raid has a lot more magic damage. Like certain bosses, and I think Sylvanas was similar this way as well, certain bosses have about 60% melee damage and 40% magic. This is why it's a little bit harder for Warrior, because it depends on what kind of magic that is. If it's constant trickles of magic, then Prot Warrior kind of a little bit sucks baseline, but it doesn't really suck, because normally trickles of magic damage, Prot Warrior doesn't really have anything to do. Pop shield, spell reflect, and for 4 seconds, you reduce 20% of the little ticks of damage, and that's it. And after that, you just take it, right? But as it stands in 9.2, obviously you have the Indomitable talent that heals you whenever you spend Rage, which basically applies to the previous argument as well, but you get way more range in 9.5 from your tier set, meaning you heal more from it. Not only that, when you get an Outburst proc and you consume it, if I'm not mistaken, you get an Ignore Pain. If not, when you pop Avatar and get the Outburst proc, you also get an Ignore Pain. You're also using Ignore Pain a lot more often because you have just way too much rage, not because the spell is particularly amazing. And top that, constant probably almost absorbed, 50% of damage that you take is almost absorbed all the time, with the heal that you get, and Prot Warrior is even tanky against trickles of magic damage. That's basically the thing. The big hits that cannot be spell reflect, or that needs to be mitigated or immune in some way, that's where Prot Warrior maybe sucks, and that's maybe where you want to have a blood decay. But so far, with the amounts of mythic experience that I have, where there were bosses that Prot Warrior should have struggled against, I didn't struggle, because the kit is there. The kit is actually really good. So this is my rant on Prot Warrior, my rant and kind of why I main it, and why I recommend everybody that comes into the streams and the comments and wanna play a tank. I would recommend starting with the Prot Warrior. It's one of the most complete tanks. It has pretty much all the tools that every other tank has, and it has all of their weaknesses as well, more or less. It gets punished for almost everything that every other tank gets punished for, most of the time. So yeah, if you can master Prot Warrior, you can fucking master any tank, man.